168. Ein kamocha va'elohim Adonai v'ein kemaasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha bechodor v'ador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch leolam voed Adonai oz li'amo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom avarachamim heitiv avirtzoncha et Zion tivnech amod Yerushalayim tivnech amod Yerushalayim ki vecha levad batachnu melech elam v'yisa Adon olamim vayehi ben Aaron vayomer Moshe kum ha'Adonai v'yafutzu oyevecha v'yanusu misanecha v'mitmipanecha ki mitzion teitzei Torah ki mitzion teitzei Torah udevar Adonai mirushalayim Baruch shenatan Torah Torah Baruch shenatan Torah Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedusha v'tov Barich shemei damari Amen. Ve'be'anarachet ve'lishmei kadisha kadisha yakira anahem martush bechan be'anarachet be'anarachet ve'lishmei kadisha kadisha yakira anahem martush bechan ye'ravakadamach detitach libi orayeta v'tachim mishalim delibi v'libadech olamach Yisrael L'tav chayim v'lishlam. Amen. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonai Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonai Kadosh Shemo.
Gadol Adonai iti Anima Shemo Yachdav Lecha Adonai Agedula V'hagevura V'hatiferet V'hanetzach V'hahod Kicho B'shamayim Uvaretz Kicho B'shamayim Uvaretz Lecha Adonai הממלכה ויעמיד נעשה לכל שרוממו רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו לאדם רגליו קדוש הוא רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קדשו כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו. You may be seated. So thank you all for coming. Shabbat Shalom. Today is the second half of last week's Torah portion, Tazria, and today is Mitzorah. I think I have exhausted enough out of these two parshiot. So I was inspired last week when I heard a beautiful Haftorah that I thought I would chant the Haftorah, which today is a special Shabbat. It's called Shabbat Hagadol. There have been some who've called it the Great Shabbat is what that means. Some people use the last two words of this Haftorah, Hagadol v'Hanorah, Shabbat Hagadol v'Hanorah. This is the great and terrible Shabbat. And I believe the reason it probably got that name is in Eastern Europe, it was not common for anyone to do a devar during during the Shabbat morning service. They waited until mincha, with the alcohol flowing through everyone before words of Torah were offered. But twice a year, on the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, also called Shabbat Hagadol, and this Shabbat, which is the Shabbat right before Pesach, also called Shabbat Hagadol. But we add the Shabbat Hagadol v'Hanorah because even though it was not common for a devar to be offered twice a year, an itinerant preacher would come through these towns in Eastern Europe, and they would give a devar relative to the holiday. Shabbat Shuvah, the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and right before Pesach, because the rituals of Pesach are so complicated. What is kosher, what is not kosher, how to kosher everything, how to sell your chametz, how to search for chametz, how to conduct the seder. So this itinerant preacher would come through town, and he would speak for about 3 hours. Hence, the great and terrible Shabbat. So I thought I would just chant this particular Haftorah, which is kind of long anyway, but we'll see. And it comes from, actually it's all about Pesach. It comes from the end of the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verses 4 through 24. And it ends the book of Nevi'im. Varach val Adonai minchat Yehuda v'Yerushalayim ki mehei olam uchshanim kadmoniyot v'karavti alechem lamishpat. I'm sorry, I forgot to say the page. 1295. Vayita eid memaher bamachashvim uvamnaafim uvanishba'im lashaker uvoshkei uvoshkei schar sachir almana veyatom umateger velo yireuni amar Adonai tzvaot ki ani Adonai lo shaniti ve'atem bnei Yaakov lo chalitem lemimei avotechem sartem mechukai velo shmartem shuvu elai v'yashuva alechem amar Adonai tzvaot va'amartem b'me nashuv hayik ba Adam Elohim ki atem kovi'im oti v'amartem b'me keva'anucha v'hama'aser ha'teruma b'ma'eratem ne'arim v'oti atem kovi'im hagoy kulo haviu et kol hama'aser et beit ha'utzar v'teref beveiti uvchanuni na bazot amar Adonai tzvaot im lo eftach lachem et arabot hashamayim v'harikoti lachem beracha ad bli dai v'ga'arti lachem ba'ochel v'lo yashchid lachem et pri ha'adama v'lo tishakel lachem gefen basadeh amar Adonai tzvaot v'isheru etchem kol hagoyim ki tihiyu atem eretz chefetz amar Adonai tzvaot chazku alai divrechem amar Adonai v'amartem ma nitabarnu alecha amartem shav avod Elohim umabetza ki shamarnu mishmarto v'chi halachnu kedoranit mipnei Adonai tzvaot v'yata anachnu me'asherim zedim gam nivenu osei rish'ah gam bachanu Elohim v'yimaletu az nidberu yirei Adonai ish el re'ehu vayakshev Adonai vayishma vayikatev sefer zikaron lefanav l'ri'ei Adonai uchoshevei shemo v'hayu li amar Adonai tzvaot layom asher ani osech segula v'chalamti alehem kasher yachmo ish al beno ha'oved oto ushmartem ur'item ben tzadik lerasha ben oved Elohim la'asher lo avado ki hinei hayom ba bo'er katanur v'hayu chol zedim v'chol oser ish'ah kash v'lihat otam hayom haba amar Adonai tzvaot asher lo ya'azov lahem shoresh v'anaf V'zarecha lachem yir'ei shemi shemesh tzedakah umarpeh bichnafeha v'yitzatem v'yishatem ke'eglei marbek v'asotem risha'im ki hiyu efer tachat kapot raglechem bayom asher ani oseh amar Adonai Tzvaot zichru Torat Moshe Avdi asher tziviti oto v'chorev al kol Yisrael chukim umishpatim hine anochi sholeach lachem et Eliyah hanavi lifnei bo yom Adonai hagadol v'hanora v'eshiv levavot al banim v'lev banim al lavotam pen avo v'keti et haaretz cherem hine anochi sholeach lachem et Eliyah hanavi lifnei bo yom Adonai hagadol v'hanora. So this actually ends the entire book of Nevi'im, the book of the prophets, and it's that last verse that just really gets you. And behold, I will send to you Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, lifnei, before the coming of the day of the Lord, the great and terrible day of the Lord. And that's how the book ends. Of course, we await Elijah's coming at the Seder. That's the reason why we have that fifth cup, the cup of Elijah, which we don't drink. We open our door to welcome Elijah to come and drink from that wine anytime he wants to come. So we'll go ahead. Thanks, Hannah. That was gave me a lot of inspiration to actually do another Haftorah today. I'll do a Mishberach for the ill in our community. Mishberach Avutin Avram Yitzchak V'Yakov Savkarach V'Leah Hu Yivrech V'Rapeh Et. Rosa Sable, Marjorie Allen, Charles Miller, Leon Capuana, Lynn Scholl, Ben Kibuli, Esther Scheuer, Susanna Urbala, Ruby Goldfield, Deanna Barber, Susie Bierman, Elizabeth Foamby, Malka Amster, Betty Ehrlich, Michelle Zucker, Davina Machado, Stephen Hirschman, Taraz Bat-Ruth, Marcia Hudson, Billy Canary, Taylor Browning, Ephraim Avraham Ben Esther Bacha, Noah Baron, Noah Argamani, Sarah Shoshana Batnami Rivka, Yael Batnami Rivka, and Gittel Tamar Bat Miriam Burke.
And Bone, Doug Shafar.
Amanda. Any other names? Viet Kolchim Bekila, Kadosha, Agudath Etz Ahayem Vekilan, Temple Beth Hor, Kadosh Baruch Malay Rachamim Malayim, Lach Zakam Kapatam Vishlach Leim Merfor Shleim Mat Shemay Nefesh Vudagub, Betoch Sha'ach Chulei Israel, Shabbat Tibli Zok Refuah, Karov Elavo Shabagal Vizman Kariv Edomar. Amen. I wish all of those suffering of refuah shlema, quick and complete healing. And we rise to return our virtual Sefer Torah, page 183. Hallelujah, et Shem Adonai, ki niskab Shemo levado, hodu halevetz v'shamayim, vayaren keren liyamo, tihila lecho, chasidav, livnei Yisrael amgrovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah, mizmor leDavid. Havu Ladonai b'nei Yelim, Havu Ladonai kavod vos, Havu Ladonai kavod shemo, Ishtachavu Ladonai b'hadrat kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamayim, El kavod yivim Adonai hamayim rabim, Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vayshaber Adonai et alzei halvanon, Vayarkidem kemo egel, Lebanon v'Sirion kemo ven re'ehim, Kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yecholel ayalot, Vayechesot nyahot, Uvehechalo kulo merkavod, Adonai lamabul yashav, Yeshav Adonai melech le'olam, Adonai oz le'amo yited, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom, uvnucho yomah. Ki lekatov natati lachem, Torati al tazovu, Etz Ahayem lamachazikim ba, V'tomcheha meushar deracheha tarchenoha, V'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh Yameinu k'kedem. You may be seated. So, Mitzvah couldn't have occurred on a better Shabbat. It's very, very difficult to find. There is a great talk on the Tazria Mitzvah, but really you can't get more than one out of it. So this is really a perfect day because I get to talk about Passover. And what I usually like to do, this was shared to me when I was in rabbinical school. And it comes, the text comes from our Mishnah. The Mishnah is what we call the oral Torah, the oral law. The basis of Jewish law comes from the discussions that surround this particular text called the Mishnah. And these conversations, the Mishnah is written in Mishnaic Hebrew. It's very easy, flowing, musical Hebrew. The conversations around the book, which comprises the Gemara, is, however, in Aramaic, a very difficult language to speak and to listen to, not necessarily to read. And the Gemara, along with the Mishnah, around the year 600, 500, became what we call the Talmud. So there are 63 tractates in the Talmud. The Mishnah is not really all that long. It's usually like this text, it's usually like this, but the discussions around it could go on for 20 or 30 pages in the Talmud. So, and the reason is the Mishnah is written very tersely. It assumes that you're being taught this. This is not a book that's meant to be read and understood. It can only be taught. And I'll give you a perfect example of how this works. This comes from Masechet Pesachim, the very first tractate. The very first Mishnah of the tractate that deals with the holiday of Pesach. Each of the tractates, all 63, always begin interestingly, and this is no exception. So this is what it says. It says, Or la'arba'a asar. It says, by the light, literally it says, the light of the 14th. So it's like, what does that mean? Well, the topic is Passover, okay? 14th happens to be sort of the date that Pesach occurs. Actually, it's the day before, okay? So we must be talking about a calendar date, okay? And it says, or it says light, but it really means night. On the night of the 14th, okay? And this year that is tomorrow night. It's Sunday night because the first Seder is on Monday night. So the night of the 14th of the month of Nisan, doesn't say that here, but in the Talmud, I guarantee you, in the Gemara, they're going to talk about what all of this means and why they chose this. So on the night of the 14th, Bodkim et hachometz la'or haner. One must search for chometz by the light of a candle. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. We don't know what, if you don't know anything about the Mishnah or Judaism, you go, well, what's chometz? We don't know but we know what chometz is. It's that stuff we don't eat on Passover. But what exactly is that? What actually is chometz? Anybody? I'm serious. It's so interesting. I asked, pardon me?
There's 5 grains.
There are 5 grains that we are forbidden to eat when it is mixed with leaven and allowed to rise, okay? Because as we all know, matzah is made from one of those 5 prohibited grains, which is wheat, okay? So chometz, its base is there are 5 base grains, wheat, spelt, oat, barley, and rye. Each of these are little seeds that can be made into flour and therefore made into cakes and put leaven in it and you could rise. I think I've heard of spelt bread before. The other ones I know we've heard of oat, rye we know, wheat, barley, that's the only one I don't know about. But the rabbis determined that these grains, they don't really look alike. They're actually very, very different texture and color and everything. But they all can be turned into flour. You can't tell the difference between the flour, so they all can be made into cakes, added leaven, and it could rise into some type of bread. So, but that's not what chometz is. That's not all that chometz is, right? The Ashkenazim decided that wasn't strict enough, so they had to add a whole category of foods. Rice, because maybe the grain looked like one of those other 5 grains. Legumes, no clue. And corn. Again, it's kind of but it doesn't look like the other ones. I don't know if you can make cornbread, but so Ashkenazim add this whole category of other products in addition to chametz, and that is called kitniot. Okay, up until about maybe 25 years ago, Ashkenazim did not eat kitniot. There was one synagogue in Los Angeles, Rabbi Rembaum, who was one of my teachers in rabbinical school. He had a very large shul called Betham in Los Angeles in Pico Robertson. And he decided he had enough of this, and he declared for his congregation that they can now eat kitniot. And everybody was shocked by this. But his congregation, they loved it because now they could eat a lot of that stuff that they weren't able to eat before. And it did catch on. And it was determined that these rules are archaic. They're old. They really don't have the same meaning that it did when they were written, okay, in the Middle Ages. And the fact is, the Sephardim, those Jews that were mainly from Muslim countries, they had no notion of this kitniot. They freely ate rice and corn and legumes. And so they didn't go by the laws of kitniot. So we're basically all coming together by aid. Now, Ashkenazim, let me be fair, still don't eat kitniot. Orthodoxy and Ashkenazic Orthodoxy still do not allow kitniot. I believe that there was a teshuvah with the conservative movement, and kitniot was allowed to be eaten, but it's an option. It's not, you must eat kitniot. It's if you desire to eat a kitniot. Now, with that said, one thing that I would do if I invite anybody to my Seder at my house, I have to tell everybody that I eat kitniot. So we will be serving kitniot, and so there are some people that still don't want to eat that stuff. So you have to be really careful about who you invite to your Seder and making full disclosure. So we search for this stuff. On the 14th, the night before, we do a search for chametz. Why? Why do we do a search for chametz? What do we search? What are we actually looking for? What do we do it for? Well, we're not supposed to eat it, okay? So what do? We have to get rid of it, okay? Well, before that, we have to clean it. We have to get it out of our carpets. We have to get it out of every room in our house, okay? It's spring cleaning on steroids. That's what Jews do this time of year. They clean. They empty their house out. They take all of their non-kosher for Passover foods. We put it in a special pantry, and then we tell the rabbi of our congregation to sell all of our chametz for us, so that we don't own it. Okay, you're not supposed to have it or own it. So you're supposed to sell it, and so that's the legal fiction that we do. Okay, the rabbi sells it to a non-Jew and then buys it back at the end of the holiday. So then you can use it after, but during the holiday you can't use any of that stuff. And we do this ceremonial searching on the night before. So on Sunday night, by Sunday afternoon, our homes, everything should be kosher for Passover. All the foods are bought. All the counters are cleaned and covered. Everything is clean and ready and kosher for Passover. But there's one little ritual we do. We search for chametz. Usual for chametz to be found, you don't need to search that place. That's great. So I don't need to search everything. If you don't have a home with teenagers, you don't have to search the bathroom. Okay. Otherwise, you do. Maybe in the garage, maybe there are places in your homes that you don't need. But this is what the Mishnah says. Okay. But then they ask the question, but v'lama asru shtei sharot b'martef makom shenach machnisim bo chametz. So it asks the question and then answers it. It says, but then why do they being the sages, the authors of the people mentioned in this Mishnah, the rabbis, why do they say that you're supposed to search for chametz why do you have to search for chametz in the two rows of the cellar? Cellar, C-E-L-L-A-R. Okay, so there are rows, there are apparently shelves in the cellar, and it answers the question, because that's a place that chametz can be found. Now, why would you find chametz in a cellar? think about the time when this was written. This was an agrarian society. So most of the people this time of year were harvesting wheat, and they would work very hard in the fields. And when it came time to have a break and eat something for lunch, they desired to find some place that was not hot. They desired to find a place that was cool. So they would go into the cellar and eat their lunch. So that's why they said you have to search for the 2 rows in the cellar, because it's a place that chametz can be found. This is just an example. And then we have an argument, okay? And it's not resolved, by the way. Beit Shammai, this is the great antagonist of Hillel. Beit Shammai, it's just a school of thought, okay, says you have to search for 2 rows over the entire space of the cellar. So you could have 2 rows in the front, you got 2 rows in the back, you get to have 2 rows everywhere. You have to search everywhere, basically, okay? Can't leave anything to chance. Beit Shammai always is the strict viewpoint, always. Beit Hillel, who takes the lenient view, says, nah, you just have to search the outer 2 rows for chametz, okay? And you might think, what does this have to do with anything, okay? Okay, search for chametz. Why do we have to have all of this, examples of where you're supposed to, where chametz might be found, and whether you're supposed to go over the entire surface or not? I will say that Beit Shammai and Hillel argue constantly in the Mishnah. There are thousands of arguments. Hillel wins all but 3. All but 3. So we have to go to we don't know what this means. And this is what the Gemara is. They're talking about this. Why does this matter? Okay? They're trying to get at the gist of what this is about. So the first commentary we go to is Rashi. Rabbi Shlomo ben Yitzchak, who lived in the 11th century in France. He lived at the time of the First Crusades and survived somehow. And I guess because he survived, all his teachers were killed in Schwum, in Speer mines in Worms in Germany, where the First Crusades massacred most of the Jews of Europe. Rashi survived, and so he wrote a commentary on the Mishnah and the Talmud. If we didn't have Rashi's comments, we wouldn't know what any of this means. So what does Rashi say? He says, we check in order to fulfill the commandment of the Torah that we should not see or find any chametz in our homes. Okay? Although we might have rid ourselves of chametz according to a personal estimation, we must nonetheless check further so that our chametz is fully destroyed and the commandment of Torah is completely fulfilled according to a set standard. So Rashi takes this is what it says, this is what it means. Okay? You shouldn't have chametz, and that means to the nth degree you shouldn't see or find any chametz. So you need to search for it. Rabbi Avraham Ovadia Betorno, he was a Jewish physician in Italy in the 15th century, says, without checking for chametz, one might actually find a crust of bread during Passover and become tempted to eat chametz. All right, so that's practical. You clean so that, you're watching TV one night and, oh man, there's something glistening in the corner. Oh man, there's a little crust of bread. I'm gonna eat that. Okay? So that's practical. And then we have 2 other opinions that go more into helping us understand what this Mishnah might mean to us. The first comes from Agudath Yisrael, Rabbi Yisrael Hamagid of Kotznitz, and he's in the 18th century. And he says, checking for chametz reminds us to remove the tendency towards evil that dwells in each and every individual person. So he's taking chametz and making something spiritual out of it. He's making something very, very personal. Okay? It's the evil that dwells in each of us, chametz. For it is not the way of an individual to check one's own deeds so carefully, but to look at the deeds of others and to find faults. I mean, isn't that what we all do? We all look at what other people are doing and we find their faults, and we don't find any of our own. I had one congregant who came to me right before Rosh Hashanah, because I was telling everybody you need to find all those people that you've hurt during the year and say you're sorry. And she came up to me, and I really had to keep from laughing, but she started talking to me about all the people that needed to ask her for forgiveness. And I went, you know what? I don't think that's right. Do not think that that's the point. Okay? So the Agudath Yisrael says we're supposed to, it's normal to look at other people, at their deeds. It is to this point that the teacher in our Mishnah is cautioning us. For when he mentions a place where there is no chametz, this means one should not check the actions of others. Rather, only one's own chametz must one remove and thereby repair one's deeds. So this is great. This is like a mid-year checkup from the high holidays, where we made all of those promises to be better, to change our character, to change things in our person. So how are we doing? So here it is, Pesach, Nisan, 6 months later, and we get to ask that question again. Get to see how we're doing. And then the last comment comes from the Haggadah that I first became aware of when I was in rabbinical school, and this guy who taught at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem came through, and he said he had written this book called A Different Night. Okay, some of you are probably familiar with it, and it's a really phenomenal Haggadah. We use that for our community Seder here. It's chock full of information and interesting things, because that's what the Seder is supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be reading dry text like you would find in your Maxwell Haggadah. Okay, this is actually the text and a whole bunch of other stuff. And on page 15 of this book, it says, the obsessive search and destruction of chametz from our homes has spiritual as well as ritual overtones. Yeast came to symbolize arrogance, because the bread raised itself above the level of matzah, though it was only filled with pockets of hot air. Yeast is also a catalyst that symbolizes the restless force of the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara. Just as yeast causes fermentation in bread and wine, it also turns them sour when not controlled. Similarly, the instinctual forces, desire and ambition, can contribute to progress, but also to discontent and corruption. On Pesach, which celebrates the rejection of Egyptian civilization and a new pristine beginning of Jewish freedom, the matzah is more appropriate fare than bread. Don Isaac Abravanel in 15th century Spain and Italy explains, the matzah represents simplicity, which is a desirable spiritual quality. Freedom involves the rejection of the flesh pots of Egypt and the removal of the restless yeast of the evil inclination. So we have 4 commentary on this Mishnah, and I just find that so amazing. I love to study Mishnah because of this, because you always read it and go, okay, what does that have to do with anything? And then on further thought, people delve into this to the nth degree. And as it turns out, there are interesting things to find. So look at chametz as the removal of our tendency towards evil, okay? That which is boastful in us, that which we need to remove to make us each better people. So I wish everyone a happy Passover. Sorry I took so long, but I thought that was worth it. Let us go ahead and continue Shabbat Shalom, Chag Kasher Pesach, and we will continue page 185. Please rise for Musaf. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora Eloyon Gomer Chasadim Dovim V'Konei HaKol V'zocher chastei avot, u'mevi goel lefnei b'neihem, l'man shemo b'yahava, melech ozer foked u'mashiach u'magin, Baruch atah Adonai, magin Avraham, mufked Sarah, atah gibor le'lam Adonai, mechayem metima Torah l'hoshia, mashi baruach morid agashem, Mechalkeu chayim bechesed, mechayei meitim berachamim ramim, somech noflim rofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, lishenei afar, michamocham bal gevurot, umido melach, Melech me'mit u'mechayeh u'matzmiach yeshua v'ne'eman atah l'chayot metim Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh ha'metim Na'aritzecha v'na'kadishcha kisot tziyach sarfei kodesh Makdishim Shimcha b'kodesh Kakatu v'yat v'yecha V'kacha el zet v'yamar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzvaot Melech ha'aretz Kevodo Kevodo Malei olam Misharatav Shoalim Zeh ayed mekom kevodo leumatam Baruch yomeru Baruch v'rnai mikomo hu yifen berachamim v'achonam am yachadim shemo erev v'voker b'chol yom tamid pamayim b'yava shema omrim shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Hu Eloheinu Avinu Hu Malkeinu Moshienu Vehu Yashmienu Berachamav Sheni B'yeinei Kochai Liot Lachem Le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Uvdivrei K'tchecha Katuv Le'mor Yimloch Adonai Le'olam Elohayich Zion, Dor Vador, Hallelujah. Lidor Vador, Lidor Vador, Lidor Vador, Nagid God Lecha, Ulenetzach Netzachim, Ulenetzach Netzachim, Kedusha Nakadish, Lidor Vador, Lidor Vador, Lidor Vador, Nagid God Lecha, Ulenetzach Netzachim, Ulenetzach Netzachim, Kedusha Nakadish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu, Mipinu lo yamush le'elam va'ed, Ki Melech Kadosh, Ki Melech Kadosh, V'kadosh Ata, L'dor Vador, L'dor Vador, L'dor Vador, Nagid Kol Lecha, Ulenetzach Netzachim, Ulenetzach Netzachim, Kedusha Nakadish, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'il HaKadosh. And we will go ahead and continue page 204. Enk Eloheinu, Enk Adonenu, Enk Malkeinu, Enk Moshienu, Enk Eloheinu, Enk Adonenu, Enk Malkeinu, Enk Moshienu, Mich Eloheinu, Mich Adonenu, Mich Malkeinu, Mich Moshienu, Enk Eloheinu, Enk Adonenu, Enk Malkeinu, Enk Moshienu, no de l'Eloheinu, no de l'Adonenu, no de l'Malkeinu, no de l'Moshienu, Enk Eloheinu, Enk Adonenu, Enk Malkeinu, Enk Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, en Keloenu, en Kadunenu, en Kimokenu, en Kemoshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, en Keloenu, en Kadunenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kemoshienu, Atahu Shektiru, Avoteinu lefanecha, et ketoret hasamim, en Keloheinu, en Kadunenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kemoshienu. We rise. Page 205 as the ark is open for Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol l'teikenu l'aliotze b'reishit shelo asan k'goye ha'ratzo v'lo samanu k'mishmachot ha'adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'goreleinu chelko hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ ומשה יקראו בשמיים מעל ושכינתו זו בגבי הרמים הוא אלוהינו אינו Emed Malkeinu Evazulato Kakatu Betorato V'yadat Ahayem V'ashemota Elavavecha Ki Adonai hu Elohim B'shamayim Imah V'yal haaretz mitachat Elohim Gagadu b'toratecha Adonai imloch le'olam v'oed v'nehemar v'hayadonai l'melech al kol ha'aretz Bayom Ma'u Yeh Adonai Echad U'Shemo Echad. You may be seated. This week we will observe yard sites for Nathan Mandelbaum, David B. Monsky, Eleanor Morton, Leon Galinsky, Nace Varon, Samuel Walter, Julius Abramson, Morris Beaton, Miriam Franco, Rita Franco, Nathan Handmaker, Pincus Hassan, Bertha R. Salzberg, Carolyn Silverman, Oscar Jerome Halbin, Francis Goldfinger, Rosa Leibovitz, Henrietta Nickel, Irene Shirley Siderman, Minnie Zacudo, Herman Axelrod, Miriam Cohen, and Ella Keller. Those observing yard site and those who mourn, please rise and join me, page 207, for the Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabba, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayichon v'yimechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalav v'zman kari v'yimaru, amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'elam molmei maya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei kudusha b'richu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran b'yalma v'yimaru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav uyaseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'mahu. Amen. So again, Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Thank you for joining me for this Shabbat before Pesach. We will celebrate the end of Shabbat tonight with the Alabama Community Virtual Havdalah. This will be Toria Stark's last Havdalah with us, as she is packing up to move to her new pulpit in New York. We couldn't be more proud of her. So tonight will be her last chance. Last chance you'll see Dahlia Road perform, at least with Toria here. Maybe they'll tour together. I hope they do after she leaves. I really hope they do. Tomorrow there is religious school at 9:30 a.m. here. Monday and Thursday we'll have regular minions at 7:15. There will be no breakfast though, because the kitchen is closed for Passover. And we don't have a kiddush today, unfortunately, because again the kitchen is closed for Passover and we don't have enough stuff to put out. I don't want to eat matzahs for kiddush. I mean, I have to put up with that at least during Passover. I'm not going to eat it now. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan. First Seder is Monday evening. The second Seder will be a community Seder here at Agudath Israel at 6 p.m. Believe it or not, we have 61 people signed up for our Seder. I'm as shocked as anybody. And Nick and Davina will be catering it, and it should be just a marvelous dinner. Hopefully a good program as well. They were arguing about how to do the tables. Usually we do a simple E, but now we have 61, and we have to do something else. So it should be interesting. And there will be services Tuesday and Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. For the first 2 days of Pesach. The office will be closed Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So next will be open is Thursday. I think that might be it for now. And we got stuff coming up after Passover, but let's get this done first. So we'll conclude with page 211. Excuse me. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra li'ed nasa v'chefso kol azai melech shemo nikra azai melech shemo nikra v'acharei kichlo takol leva hado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu oveh v'hu yiyeh b'tifara v'hu yiyeh b'tifara v'hu echad v'yein sheni l'ham shelo le'achbira b'li reshit b'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'ha'misra v'lo ha'oz v'ha'misra v'hu eli v'chai go'ali v'tzor chevli b'yetzara v'hu nisi umanosli minat kosi b'yom mekara minat kosi b'yom mekara Biyado afkid ruchi biyet ishan v'yaira v'imaruchi keviyati Adonai li v'lo ira Adonai li v'lo ira. Shabbat shalom. So there is no kiddush today, but I will offer this if you want. I studied the 9th chapter of the tractate of Pesach, and there is one particular Mishnah that actually explains more fully what is going on at the Seder. And if you guys want to spend a couple minutes looking at with me, I think you won't be disappointed.